Appreciate everyone. As you can tell, we have a really global audience, and also the founders we back from Israel, from Korea. We really like to build a global community of go-getters. So with that, maybe we can start with June. Tell us more about Furiosa. How'd you get started? By the way, the name Furiosa, I remember seeing your office. Everything has to do with anger. Like, what is happening? Why is the product War Boy? How do you guys come up with a name? Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me here. So we are a semiconductor company who develop AI chips. So AI chip is a semiconductor that can run AI applications such as, let's say, ChatGPT and all this generative AI very fast and also very efficiently. So I'll just to give you some good idea. So this is our first generation chip product we call like a Warboy, you mentioned. So if you're familiar with the GPU, it's the same form factor actually. So if you plug this card into the server slot or Tesla slot, it enables AI applications run much faster actually. First generation product we commercialized. So we actually started about 6 years ago. So 6 years ago, it's very evident that AI shows very amazing capability already at the time. This is a new AI semiconductor for AI computations. And we got, so around the time I started company, I watched the movie came out, the Mad Max Fury Road, and the Furiosa comes from there.
Funny enough, I thought about MarketX because I was like, oh, X-Men. So apparently a lot of movie aficionados here. So next, we would love to have Jay, if you don't mind, walk us through your experience. Obviously, you're a veteran in Silicon Valley, also on the world stage. Can you tell us more about how you guys started GFT and your background? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you again for inviting me today. It's my pleasure. So GFT Ventures is a startup venture capital firm. We started a couple of years ago during the middle of the pandemic. My partner and I, however, prior to that, had about 20 years of investment history. A lot of that was with large corporations. So as Cathryn introduced, I actually was with Samsung, basically setting up the team, creating the investment strategy, and it's been already 20 years. Subsequent to that, I co-founded a firm called Translink Capital, where I teamed up with other recovering corporate venture guys. So I was the Korean guy, ex-Samsung. I had Japanese partners, ex-SoftBank, ex-Hikari Sishin, Taiwanese partners, ex-UMC, ex-Foxconn. And the idea was by working together, we could work with multiple corporates from the region. And we did that quite successfully. We started with a modest $50 million fund, grew that to an $850 million AUM fund. However, the more successful we were, personally for me, the more challenged I was, because every time we raised a new fund, we were adding more corporates. And over time, we were working, at least for myself in Korea, working with 10 different corporations across 7 different industries, from telcos, consumer electronics, internet, mobile, gaming, auto, fintech, semiconductor companies. And as you can imagine, trying to cover even one of those sectors in depth is challenging enough. To try to do that for multiple sectors was impossible. So what I ended up doing was switching strategy, and instead of focusing on vertical specific investment opportunities like telecom related or auto related, started to look at horizontal layers of tech that would impact every single vertical, and ended up investing from a relatively early stage back in 2008, 2009, in areas that now we call deep tech or frontier tech, such as big data, cloud, artificial intelligence, robotics, AR, VR, all the way to blockchain. And it turned out that the most successful investments that we had made at Translink were those early bets made in emerging new technology categories. And so during the middle of the pandemic, first time in my 20 years plus working history, had a chance to take a break, think about what I've done for the last 20 years and look ahead at the next 20 years. And it became very obvious to me what I really wanted to focus on for the next 20 years was really focusing exclusively on investing in frontier technologies. And so I reached out to a good buddy of mine. This was right before the pandemic really struck the US back in March of 2020, to kind of float the idea to see if he was interested. And while I was hopping around at Samsung and Translink, he had spent 20 years since 2001 at the single company that originally when he joined was best known for making graphics acceleration cards for PC gaming. And this company was NVIDIA. And so my partner, Jeff Herbst, and I, we were part of the corporate venture community for many years. We co-invested in multiple companies, especially in the AI space. And most importantly, we became good friends by working out together for over a decade at a local boxing gym here in San Carlos. And so we decided to team up and create GFT Ventures, Global Frontier Technology Ventures, which focuses exclusively on frontier tech areas with an emphasis around AI and data science. We also look at robotics, or autonomous machines as we call it, as well as other frontier tech areas. We were very fortunate to launch the fund before the market for fundraising got dead. And we were able to successfully exceed our fundraising target of 100 million and just announced our final closing literally last week in Singapore with a $140 million fund. Our goal is to be the first price round lead or co-lead investor. So sometimes that's labeled a seed, sometimes that's labeled an A. But we'd like to think that we have 15 to 20 years of pattern recognition, as so to speak, in AI words. And we leverage our corporate connections to add value by helping startups to get in front of their first customer or go-to-market partner. Shockingly, after 20 years, a lot of our friends now are leading global innovation and global corporate investing at some of the leading tech companies across North America, Asia, and Europe. And that network actually helps us a lot, not only to add value to the portfolio, but the unfiltered feedback we get from those introductions becomes a big part of our due diligence.
Great, thank you, Jay. So maybe we can start with a little bit background and also landscape, right? A lot of us here are very excited about generative AI world. We actually have a panel focused on that, a lot of folks working on different aspects of AI. But I think let's do a deep dive in what really supports that ecosystem, right? So maybe June, I don't know, maybe you can start. How has the semiconductor market evolved in your experience, given that you worked at AMD, you worked at Samsung? What do you think is, especially with the rise of generative AI, how has the microchip industry evolved? And what do you think is needed for us to see significant progress here?
When I was in college and the graduate school, the CPU is a very dominant force at the time. I mean, there was a Moore's law. Everyone probably was aware of it. Like every 2 years, the density of the number of transistors doubles in every 2 years. And there was a huge innovation driven by great companies such as Intel, in data center, in the PC. But in the middle of 2000, there was also NVIDIA emerged in the late 90s actually. But it remained in the graphics space. But in around 2005, 2006, when I was in graduate school, the GPU architecture, people think about how to make it more general purpose parallel machine for a parallel application other than just graphics. So the CUDA emerged, and so graduate students put hands on this GPU stuff. But still, it was in the niche area compared to the CPU. CPU was very dominant in data center because it's very general purpose machine actually. But this AI changed a lot of the landscape actually. So in early 2010, as you know, the AlexNet emerged, and AlexNet was enabled actually, or was possible by actually the computing power of the GPU at the time. And since then, 2011 to this time, 2023, every year, the computing requirement of AI increased 10 times each year, actually. If you look at the computing requirement of the model, state-of-the-art model, let's say from the AlexNet to up to right now, GPT-4, the computing demand increases 10 times each year. It's even 7 times faster than Moore's law. So people right now, it's why NVIDIA right now emerged a very strong dominant winner in this space, because they were the only one who were able to provide solution that can keep up with that demand. There's still a gap, but the NVIDIA is the only one right now who was able to keep up with that huge amount of computing demand.
So I ask, why do you guys think you can eat NVIDIA's lunch?
Okay. But if you look at the origin of NVIDIA, it started from graphics actually. We think it's more, from our point of view, it's more general purpose parallel computing machine. But we are really focusing on the computing for AI applications, basically the AI application powered by a deep neural network. So the way we achieve much better efficiency, also a good performance, is like we are narrowing down our scope to the computing required for these AI applications. So that's why we think we have a kind of window of opportunity with this new emerging AI applications.
How do you see this landscape evolve, right? Some people might say this is incumbents. There's like decades of work to catch up. Some people might say, hey, this is a brand new world. We have to give startups a chance, right, at succeeding. I mean, when AMD gets started, nobody knows, how big it was going to be, right? It took decades to get there. So what's your take on the current state of GPU competition?
Sure. So allow me to preface my response by, my partner is very biased. Having been at NVIDIA for 20 years and leading BizDev, M&A corporate investments there, he's with a strong belief that they've built an ecosystem that is going to be very difficult for any company, let alone any startup, to challenge. And so I am definitely influenced by that. But if you look at it from a longer historical perspective, and I started my investment career over 20 years ago, where there actually were attempts by startups to go after the big boys at the time. And at the time, originally in the PC era, Intel with their microprocessor was the big fish. There had been many attempts to that. I would probably say AMD is probably the only survivor. And being the only survivor, they have actually done well, especially with Lisa Su as CEO in the last number of years. But it's been an extremely difficult market for any startup to try to penetrate. There's a lot of dead bodies that have attempted and have failed. The same with the modem chip. When Qualcomm was dominating that, there was dozens of startups. I looked at many of them. Many of the big hardware vendors, including Samsung, were always looking for a Qualcomm alternative. I don't know if anybody in the room has done business with Qualcomm. They are extremely difficult to work with. They value their IP, and they will demand a ransom for that IP and royalties. And so there's been many attempts. Again, a lot of dead bodies. Does this surprise me that there's attempts to try to go after kind of the next opportunity against NVIDIA? It doesn't. But the bar is extremely high. Again, that doesn't mean that it's impossible, and companies like Furiosa and others are getting funded with great teams and focusing on very specific opportunities. However, I do want to share, and Dr. Paik and June, my friend, is already well familiar with this. Building that ecosystem is non-trivial. You mentioned CUDA, that ecosystem, which is basically the software platform that enables programmers to program their AI applications that go into the chips. For developers in general, they are not fans of learning new things or new platforms or new ways to program. And so they are very much embedded in that ecosystem. So that's probably the biggest barrier to entry. And CUDA was developed 20 years ago. There's been hundreds of thousands of man hours gone into that, and developers have gone extremely comfortable with that ecosystem. That's number one. Number two, in order to manufacture a chip, you need capacity at the highest geometries, and fab capacity is very limited. So TSMC, Samsung, Global Foundries, UMC, there's really only a handful of manufacturing facilities that can actually cover any sort of semiconductor manufacturing capacity. And there's really only two that actually can build the geometry that an AI chip needs to be competitive, and that's TSMC and maybe Samsung, right? Plus, in order to actually not only fabricate the chip, it also has to be packaged in the right way, limited packaging capacity. It also has to partner with server providers like Foxconn and others. And again, this entire ecosystem, NVIDIA is not an overnight success, as everybody knows. It's taken 20 plus years for them to get to where they are. And that's why, in my opinion, it's going to be very difficult for any startup to try to be competitive in that domain unless, again, there's very much specific focus in their application and there is enough resource support, both in terms of capital as well as an ecosystem built around that. Now, quite frankly, and I'm Korean myself, Korea is the only country that I'm aware of that has actively funded AI chip companies to go after NVIDIA. And if you think about that, and everybody I think knows Jensen Huang is Taiwanese, and that ecosystem around the Taiwanese partnerships of TSMC, ASE, as well as Foxconn and others, that's enabled NVIDIA to be so successful. Korea has an ecosystem potentially to match that with Samsung and others, Amcor and other partnerships. But again, for a startup to compete with, basically NVIDIA having a 20-year head start, it's not going to be easy.
So I will chime in here. A lot of people ask, Cathryn, you're so young. Why do you have this immense interest in semiconductors? Back in 2009, I was basically working at an investment bank. And we had this conference. We had about 100 of CEOs coming. And there was that quiet guy in the corner, like no one was talking to him. I walked up to him, love to learn more about your company. Turns out this is like CEO of VeriSilicon, one of the largest chip-on-design company, Wayne Dai. His sister is also Wei Dai, founder CEO of Marvell. So we had on this amazing experience of going down to China, Taiwan, seeing the entire ecosystem. I met about 40 plus CEOs of entire upstream, downstream supply chain. Like you said, it really is decades of friendship amongst all the people to build this thing, right? And the sad part is, I was just at Milken Global earlier this year. We had a senator, I will name who. He said something along the lines of, if we can't have it, they can't have it, right? So there's this all in the Pentagon Papers, obviously with the geopolitical issue arising with US and China. As an Asian American, right? I'm just curious, like, how do you guys see this conflict? Because we're talking about really our entire lives. I mean, we can't live without a computer, without a phone today. So how is this conflict between nations going to really change our lives? The entire supply chain will have to be modified. And with new countries coming up as new forces that are competing with incumbents, right? On one hand, we want to see companies succeed. On the other hand, we also want to see our lives stay peaceful and innovation keeps going. So how do you guys see the US-China conflict really affecting this industry? And what is your prediction on what's to come in the next 5-10 years?
First, answering the Jay's kind of perspective, it's very difficult to compete with existing incumbents such as NVIDIA. And what Jay described was why I was able to raise barely like $1 million when I requested $20 million for our investors like 6 years ago. There are so many reasons why it's a very difficult thing to do. But you see that the one thing I like to just say is our first generation product, actually this one, is already deployed in one of the data centers in Korea. And it's already serving some enterprise applications of AI capabilities right now. If you think about it, let's say like if we really try to replace Intel CPU with one of data centers there, I mean, it's almost impossible thing. Like, let's say you like to replace the Intel CPU with your chip in some data centers. Your chip needs to be support all the OS and all the enterprise applications and all like different like applications actually. But we are able to put this chip into our customer because we are able to support some of their AI models with our chips. So even that, so this kind of ecosystem like the of the GPU is quite different from the ecosystem of the CPU because as long as, let's say, we can support we have very good support of, let's say, like ChatGPT or certain like mid-journey models. Mid-journey like don't care about whether you support other applications very well. As long as we can support that application very well, it's possible that they can adopt our chips. So as Jay mentioned, we have some opportunity. We can really kind of focus on certain application. Another thing is also I don't think it's also logical to think that NVIDIA will monopolize this computing market for the next 10 years. I think it's not good for ecosystem and the people. I think there must be some other alternative solutions with some kind of innovations with their product actually. And the last thing I just want to like this say, as actually the GPU is very power hungry actually. It consumes a lot of power. So this AI chip, the fundamental value proposition of this AI chip is much more efficiency. This efficiency comes from the innovation of like a chip design, natively designed for AI computing. And we are trying to build very equivalent software stack that's very focusing on this AI ecosystem right now. Developer ecosystem, like a lot of AI application developer nowadays don't use CUDA directly. Most of them use TensorFlow or PyTorch. But it's true that the current TensorFlow PyTorch had very tightly coupled to CUDA. But this Google and the Meta and all hyperscaler don't like their software are very dependent on the NVIDIA product. So what they do is they try to decouple their product so that different hardware, AI chip hardware, can also attach to their software stack. So it's impossible that for a single startup such as us to move the entire software ecosystem by ourselves. But it's actually customer side who try to move this ecosystem not too much dependent on a single vendor actually. So combining these two, I think that startup definitely, I think has, it's not easy, but I think it has some chance for this AI chip space.
Great. Yeah, that was really informative. Thank you. So Jay, how do you see the development of frontier tech beyond semiconductors, right? What are the other areas of innovation you think that are happening today? I mean, obviously, we all know Gen AI is what some people are saying San Francisco's going down, but Gen AI is the thing that saved us, right? So how do you think about, what are the other areas of innovation that's happening and propelling the artificial intelligence forward?
You mentioned the US-China geopolitical. Let me just touch upon that briefly, and then I'll talk about some of the other areas that we look at. I think, again, history has proven time and time again that necessity drives invention. And what's happening from my contacts and what I understand in China is because of the US embargo, there's a massive amount of investment and a lot of focus on developing their own ecosystem and industry there. It's not going to be easy, but it's something that, again, with the resources, both human and capital resources, I believe that China will be able to develop their own industry because, frankly, this decoupling is not going to change direction anytime soon. And in order to keep up with the technology scale and development, the industry will have to innovate, and ultimately this embargo will actually accelerate that development, in my opinion. Coming back to your next question about frontier tech. So what we do, because we have been following the development of AI and data science for the last 20 years or so, on behalf of these larger companies investing in startups, we try to look ahead at what the implication would be and what would be the next industries that can emerge of these technologies. And some of the most obvious areas that we at GFT Ventures focus on among the broad spectrum of frontier tech. So we're not looking at space tech, as we saw from the panel earlier. We're not looking at biopharmaceutical drug discovery. That's not our area of focus. But what we do know is with the advancements of AI and data science, areas like robotics, as well as digital health, are going to emerge as big opportunities, in our opinion. I personally have been following the robotics industry for 15 years during my time at Samsung. At TransLink, our investors included Foxconn, who's the largest customer of robotics technology in the world, Hyundai Motors, which acquired Boston Dynamics, and any automobile manufacturer, as well as obviously Samsung and all the consumer electronics companies are focusing on developing robotics that can be used in our everyday lives. And if you think about the fact that if you walk into a modern manufacturing facility today, there's really not too many people because the entire manufacturing and assembly process is automated. And yet in our day-to-day lives, even after 20 years since launch, the best-selling consumer-facing service robot is still the Roomba, the cleaning machine. And think about all the technology development that's happened in the last 20 years, and yet that is still the best-selling consumer product in the robotics space. So there is going to be innovation. The advancements in AI and data science, as well as advancements in sensor technology. So that's basically the brains is the AI. The sensor technology are the other senses. 5G connectivity that enables what's called brainless robotics, where the processing is actually done in the cloud, and it's fast enough with the connectivity that enables lightweight, longer-lasting, less power-consuming robots that can go on for longer periods of time to do whatever, cleaning, serving food, doing security activities and whatnot. And so all of those innovations we see as opportunities. And frankly, again, if you go to China, there are far more robotics companies in the day-to-day lives. If you walk into a hotel, if you walk into a restaurant, it's just a matter of time that that's going to proliferate across all of our daily activities. So for me personally, that's a big area of interest, tracking that carefully, not only on the consumer side, but again, just repetitive, dangerous, mundane tasks that can be done far more efficiently and far more cost effectively. Robotics are going to continue to emerge, and it's a matter of time. Again, there's been a lot of dead bodies along the way, and a big part of what we do as an investor is we need to kind of pick the right time to go into these opportunities, and we believe that this is actually the right time, thanks to the developments in AI.
Yeah, so I'm gonna ask a few competing, I guess, questions. So first of all, how do you guys think about beyond traditional computing? What do you see as the most promising applications of AI microchips in the next 5 years, right? Besides what we talk about every day, all these companies get funded with billions of dollars. Where do you see the innovation?
As I mentioned, the computing requirement for AI right now is still incredible, actually. So a lot of this generative AI company, one of their differentiating factor is actually how many GPUs they have, actually. There is a kind of interesting correlation right now, these AI companies and their AI computing power. Is because it's quite different from the old software company in that your software competitive needs is not determined by how much computing you own, actually. But AI is quite different in that more GPU you have, you can develop more powerful AI out of that capability. So here, for the next 5 years, I think there is a huge drive, actually, for these generative AI companies to possess more computing power in a more cost-effective way, actually, because they also have a limited budget right now. I heard 80% of generative AI company spend their money on AI infrastructure these days, owning GPU or running GPU, operating GPU.
Some companies we know are spending 20 million a day on this. So
right. So even we estimate this OpenAI right now might make money or lose money because of this all this operation cost of managing this huge AI infrastructure for serving. So making this AI computing more efficient at the same time, more scalable, will be huge driver. So this generative AI will be kind of new Moore's law driver to making AI more powerful and scalable and way more efficient, less sustainable and less carbon footprint, which is going to be huge innovation driver for the next 5 to 10 years.
I want to ask one question. So I know last time I visited you in Korea, you mentioned the week before something that one of our mutual friends, Greg Brockman, or founder from OpenAI, was thinking about working with you guys. How do you think about the ecosystem development, right? Obviously, everyone needs to work hand in hand. But before, maybe perhaps it was more of a Taiwanese crew, right? But now we are looking at really a global collaboration. What do you see is your role in making building partnerships with, let's say, ASUS or OpenAI, Hugging Face, right? A lot of these ecosystem players. How do you see you guys all working together?
That's a very important question, actually. Also very strategically important question. So for us, when you build this card, our silicon is manufactured by Samsung Foundry. It's manufactured here in the United States, Samsung's Austin factory. And we build the card together with ASUS right now. So ASUS is in Taiwan. So we work with them to build this card. So for our second chip, we work with TSMC right now. So we try to work with all the global partners who can enable this technology together. And on the upper side, there is right now uprising AI application companies these days, such as you mentioned Hugging Face. We collaborate with Hugging Face these days to run their popular models on top of our chip. And also OpenAI and all these Midjourney, all these companies, we try to build a relationship with them so that we can target their application with our chip. And also there is cloud vendors like Google, all the hyperscalers who kind of provide all this infrastructure for this enterprise company. In addition to that, also there's a lot of on-premise enterprise demand as well. So we don't have an answer yet, but we try to build a really good business partnership and also technology partnership with all these partners. Actually.
Great. So my last question, I know we have a couple minutes left. So Jay, what is your prediction, right? Given all the rapid advancements in quantum computing, neuromorphic computing, right? How do you envision the future of AI chips in the next decade?
Wow, that's a tough question. Maybe I'll skirt the question a little bit if you don't mind, because frankly, if you look at the investment landscape around AI, and this is a gross simplification, there's going to be AI infrastructure opportunities, which include AI chips and other kind of infrastructure, so to speak, which in our opinion is going to be dominated primarily by big tech. And if you look at the current funding that's going into some of the, what I would consider artificial general intelligence platforms like OpenAI or their competitors like Anthropic, Hugging Face, Cohere, and others, it's actually being led, and I think people just recently heard about the announcement that Anthropic is putting another billion or two, I'm sorry, Amazon is putting another billion or two in Anthropic. What most people don't realize is that a lot of the investment dollars that go into these LLM models, so to speak, are actually investment dollars from whether it's from Microsoft into OpenAI or Google going to Anthropic or Amazon going into Hugging Face, is these cloud service providers are going to get all of their investment dollars and more back in cloud service revenue. And if you follow, the value of the revenue actually is substantially higher because that actually has a multiplier on their market cap. So for them, they have huge strategic value to be able to invest in these opportunities. And they frankly care less about the valuation. However, if you are a financial investor like we are, then that is not a game that we want to play. And we've played the strategic game, so we know it really well. And unless you're extracting strategic value like other big boys, then from a purely financial perspective, it's very difficult to justify the valuation at this time. I'm not saying that these companies are not going to be successful eventually and are not going to generate value, but in order to actually see early revenue, it's going to require a lot of investment to train these models and whatnot. We don't play that game. What we play in is what we call the application game. So we are looking for vertical specific application. So the analogy is, if you look at these artificial general intelligence LLMs, they're like seeing a general practitioner from a medical perspective. They'll take your temperature, they'll check your pulse, and they can prescribe to you kind of what medicine is needed. But if anybody's played with ChatGPT, GPT-4 and whatnot, if you type in anything that you know something about, the level of accuracy and depth is limited. So what we invest in is what we call specialists, these vertical specific opportunities where if you're in real pain, if you're an enterprise, then you want somebody that knows something specific about your industry or your business function. So this could be from agriculture to advertising to manufacturing. It could be from HR to R&D to sales and marketing as well. And any company that focuses on that specific area, that is able to have a value proposition, get early customer traction, get customer data ingest, improve their models, and improve their accuracy and specificity, those are the companies, in our opinion, that could be more successful with a much smaller amount of capital. And those are the opportunities that we're looking to fund. In addition to that, there's going to be enablers that enable these companies to be successful as well. So again, just different investment perspectives.
Thanks, everyone. I feel like I did a very bad job because we're super, over, but everything's great. I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you both. Thank you for traveling all the way from Korea, especially. So, round of applause. Thanks, everyone. And we'll take a short break.